So I didn't see Christian walking in yet, so I might sneak into his part a little bit as well, while he's still on his way. Or am I wrong? Or you secretly sneaked in at the back seat?
Is it a good point to possibly take a break, perhaps, if it's a natural break? Give Christian a chance to show up, or would you prefer to do a section and then see if he gets there?
I'm either way fine. I can also sneak into his part a little bit and just, I'm not sure if the timing is already right for a break.
We're about 50 minutes in, so it's kind of loosely on the agenda when we said, but we can give it another 5-10 minutes if you like. It's whenever you think it's a good place to pause.
Yeah, I just quickly checked the chat, and I see that Christian is stuck somewhere in traffic. So big time fun. So I don't think that we should wait too long for him. We just keep on going, I suggest, and then let's say after this part in this chapter, we'll do a natural break.
Cool. Yeah, good.
Yeah, cool. So let's talk a bit about the enterprise deployment techniques. I just showed you how we used to work for the past years. We build a solution in desktop, we publish it, done. But there's way more to it that we can do nowadays, especially with all the recently released features. And the things that we're gonna introduce you to is basically things that will help you in the scalability of the solution. So ensure that you can have a growing user base while the solution remains stable and performant. Think about implementing a robust security for your sensitive data and further optimization. All these things come into play when you grow the solution from something small that you started as a local initiative into something way bigger. Especially on enterprise level, this is what you want to do. This is where you want to take care of. And things that you might want to start doing, and this is where you see the German touch of Christian, Power BI Architektur, is basically a process around all of this. And we highlight a little bit more here. What we're going to see is basically the process beginning to end and where we're doing what. So at first, we as content creators, we are mainly working here. We build the queries with Power Query. We build the data model. We build a report. And that's what we're doing with Power BI Desktop. And we're publishing that Power BI file just like we did a second ago. And we're publishing that, for example, to a personal workspace in the Power BI service. And all of that, what lives there is our reports, our dashboards, workbooks, and data sets. We can put sensitivity labels on it. We can put alerts on it. And all that connects in the end to the way how we consume the data, being via the Power BI mobile app directly through the service. But something that we didn't talk about yet is also the system oversight. So tracking usage, for example, and the scheduled refreshes we just have seen to configure to regularly update the data. This is typically what I just showed you in demo to is typically what you will keep on doing for what we call personal BI. So everything that you do in your personal workspace, it doesn't scale beyond your own scope. Then if we look at Team BI, we're basically leveling up a little bit. We're leveling up to make it more robust and to make it more governed. So we're going to set it up in a shared workspace. And the main differences is basically what we have on the right side of this line. So everything that we do over there, which is in the workspace, we can put a bit more content. So we also have data flows, but that's not the only thing. We also integrate it, for example, in Teams, in the applications that we're all using throughout the day. But we also reach a way larger user base. And because we have a larger user base, the stability and the reliability of our solution becomes more important. Then we have a concept where we introduce the more advanced data model management. And with more advanced data model management, I tend to say you're implementing more advanced features. Things like the calculation groups, or maybe translations, or object level security, and a lot of more tools come into play. So we have a few new things here, which is Tableau Editor to build our queries and models, no longer only Power BI Desktop. We publish our solution via the XML endpoint. So we're publishing it as code and not as a binary file. So we're no longer publishing the PBIX file. We're interacting with tools like DAX Studio, other third-party tools, but maybe also PowerShell, SQL Server Management Studio, or ALM Toolkit. There are tons of other tools that come into play with the more advanced techniques. Not even talking about everything that you can do on an admin level to get insights, especially if you start working with Power BI Premium. Because all these XML features that I just highlighted here, they are premium specific. Due to that, you need a premium capacity or a Fabric capacity or Power BI Premium per user license. And this is where it becomes more interesting, more governed, more robust, and way more features. And that's also what we're going to do when we introduce Azure DevOps to do your release management. Typically what we can do nowadays with the Git integration, with the new Power BI project files that I'm going to talk about in a bit, is basically we start developing our solution locally on our computer. So everything we do right here with maybe Tabular Editor, with maybe Power BI Desktop, maybe if you want to a tool like Visual Studio Code or any other Git integration tool of your preference. And we commit our local changes, so everything we did here, to the cloud. So let's say we have a nice cloud here. I'm very bad at drawing on the screen. So we have a very nice, we commit our local changes right there. We commit it to a repository, and that's the Git repository. And that Git repository keeps track of all the versions of the content that we have. So every minor change that we make and every minor change that we push to that repository, that change is going to create a new version. But we also have some concept that's called branching. And branching means you can have multiple copies of the same metadata, of the same code over there. So you can have a version that is still in development while you leave your current version of production untouched. As soon as we want to release everything we have in Azure DevOps to the Power BI service, so to our workspace, we can go through Azure Pipeline. So we see right here. We can do some further testing. We can automate some testing even. We can do some validations, for example, and finally we release it. And in the very final step, then we release it to our workspace that we have right there. In the beginning, I briefly touched upon having a development, and test, and a production workspace to isolate them. You already see that here. We just visualized it as one, but you have 3 different workspaces. And each of these workspaces, we release content from workspace to workspace using the Power BI deployment pipelines that we have right here. So Azure DevOps only interacts over this line with the development workspace, but to grow from development to tests is what we basically do through the deployment pipeline from test to production as well. Since this month, the deployment pipelines, if you're familiar with that, support more than only 3 stages. Previously, you were bound to having development, test, and production. Now you can have 2 up to 10 stages, and you can define yourself if you want to have a development, test, acceptance, pre-production, and production, or whatever names you come up with. But this is what we will basically do when we start talking about a more governed, more enterprise-ready and enterprise-proof way of developing your Power BI solution. And I'm going to talk you through all the concepts that I've just briefly touched upon in these pictures. So let's talk a bit about the integration of Power BI with Git. And Git is, in this case, just a very common term for everything we already have been doing over the years with versioning for software development. So Git is basically helping us to do version control, to track the changes and collaborate on Power BI projects in Git. It helps us to do collaborative development and together with the team work on the same solution, and also to do some history tracking. So if we want to know, hey, we have a bug, when was this introduced? We can circle back to when was this first occurring? When was this change made to the data model? Especially that last one is also a very important one, not to blame somebody, but to know to which version you want to roll back. That history tracking is something that we never could do based on the PBIX files. Because if you look at the metadata of a PBIX file, you cannot really see what is inside that file. And with the Power BI project files, we can. So as soon as we get started with Git, there are a few things that we need. And we're all going to see all of this. That is Git, and Git is not necessarily Power BI, it's not necessarily Azure DevOps, but it's a general concept. That is the tool of your preference to work with Git. In the example that I'm going to show you, we're going to use Visual Studio Code. You can also do something with command line if you like, or you can use another tool. There's also other Git tools on the market. And we use Azure DevOps. And Azure DevOps to do our release management, to basically get the automated testing in and to get approval for releases. And we have Power BI Desktop, like we know and love. So Git in itself is a version control system. It will help you to track the changes in your Power BI project files, or in general in any code file, not necessarily only in Power BI files. And it provides you some core functionality for version control to do branching, merging, and collaboration. And branching and merging are the typical terms and concepts that relate to Git. And basically, Git works best if you use it with code, but it can also handle larger files like PBIX files. And I see Christian walking in there. Hey. So that's the generic concept around Git. Then the tool that we're going to use is Visual Studio Code. And Visual Studio Code is just a client that can work with Git. So you need software on your computer that connects with Git. And in this case, we're going to use Visual Studio Code. You can also use Visual Studio Code to really change your Power BI solution, but you don't have to. You can still keep on using Power BI Desktop for that. But there are also other familiar tools like SourceTree. The benefit of Visual Studio Code, it's a free tool, it's a Microsoft tool. It's reliable in that sense. It's not a third-party tool. And for larger organizations, it's often important that it is related to a bigger corporation behind it, for example, Microsoft. Then we have Azure DevOps, and Azure DevOps is basically a platform that helps us to manage all of this. And DevOps comes with a lot of features. We're mainly going to use the Azure repositories here, which is our Git repository. But it's a platform that helps us to plan and develop, but also to test and deliver and monitor our entire cycle from beginning to end. If you're working in sprints and you want to keep track of your sprints and all the work, all the tasks that you're working on, you can, for example, link all your changes in code directly to the Azure board, where you keep track of all your work items. And the entire release beginning to end is what you can automate and control with Azure pipelines, for example. And then the last one before I'm gonna, you want to hand over?
Yeah, should I take over?
Yeah,
this part.
Sure.
Okay, then first of all, sorry to everyone. I know that you came here, spent your time, listened to some speakers, and now one of the speakers is terribly late. So I'm really sorry for that. Fortuna didn't have it in her heart to let me recover from my mistake earlier today. So the flight changed. Yeah, had some issues, then delays. Really sorry about that. Okay, you're sharing, Mark?
So if you want to control it, then I can invite you to the Teams meeting and you can yeah.
Or if you want to click it, Mark, that's fine with me. Yeah, so of course, I'm just going to jump in here then. The last part, if we want to enable Git into the whole situation, or if we want to introduce Git in the whole situation, we need Power BI. Because yeah, that is kind of self-explanatory that we need Power BI Desktop, especially to work with the whole file, because that's where we're developing most of the time, and where we're doing some transformations, and we're going to see that later on. You want to advance one slide? Maybe it's good to get in the call, because I need to demo later on. Yeah. Mark, can you take one further?
One further.
So the Git integration steps, or what you need to do to actually enable Git when you configured everything and have all the software that you need to use and that you want to use. No worries. There's still lots of stuff to cover and lots of stuff we want to share with you. So I'll just go right back to it. What we have to do is then publish to Git, or actually make our files available for Git to use it, because we couldn't do versioning and use Git before. Because we had PBIX files, right? And PBIX files are not really they're not usable for versioning because we can't use binary files in versioning. Just large files doesn't really. I mean, there's some workarounds, but it's really not the best to do that. So what we have to do is we have to actually transform our PBIX files into PBIP files, and we are also going to see how that looks. So we publish to Git, so to speak, and then one of the last step, or basically not a step, but the benefit is that we can now then better collaborate on the files and actually co-author anything that we want to do in Power BI, which is a pretty cool thing. Important concepts that we need to talk about when it comes to Git, and I'm not sure if you all have experience and have worked with Git before and already know all that, but things that you really need to at least get a bit familiar with when you want to go down that road and do some enterprise deployment or this versioning benefits is the branching, which we're going to talk about later a bit when it comes to deployment. But it's basically the way that you structure your workable and your work results into different streams and bring them together. So really, you think about your increments that you're doing to your PBIP files and how you want to bring them back together and then deploy into a final result. And the push, pull, and commit. And this is something that, at least to me, in the beginning, when I wasn't really familiar with it, and when I was first using it, was a bit, a bit weird and a foreign concept to me, and I didn't know what the push and pull means. But it's once you get a grasp of it, it's actually really, really easy. You have two things that you need to keep in mind, and one is that you have a local and a remote repository. So you have a local copy and a remote copy that you're working on, and we're gonna look at that. So this is something that really goes into that. And when you pull something from the remote repository into your local repository. When you push something, you push it to the remote repository, and commits are basically just little saves, you could call them. So it's every time that you make a change, you make a commit, so that you can then go back to either revert that change or relook at it, take parts of it. So for example, if you're writing two measures or introducing two new measures into your model, you probably want to do two commits. Because maybe in the end you see, okay, this one measure, I don't need it, I want to take it out. And if there's dependencies on it, with the two commits, you can identify where you exactly made those changes and then take them out or leave them in, whatever you want to do with it. So it's really the small changes and the small features that you want to introduce, those are commits. Then I mentioned it, the PBIP file. The PBIX file is a binary file, so everything's in there and it's not readable. So we can't really do anything with it. Or we can publish it via the Power BI desktop, and that's basically it. But we can't really look into it. And if we want to identify what's in there, it's a little bit harder. And this is where the PBIP, the Power BI project file, comes into play. And the Power BI project file is a set of folders and a set of files in a folder structure that is a lot better readable, and it's code. So it becomes now, from this binary file, a way to actually display what you did in this binary file as code, and thus you can actually enter it into your Git repository and then publish it. And I will just show it because it's way easier if you have a look at it, and if I'm not talking too much about it. So let's have a look at what a PBIP file looks like. And I'm going to open it. So the thing that I'm going to open is this. I'm going to open just a normal PBIX file, and then in the preview features, you can actually enable, and let me do that one. Preview features, you can actually enable the option to enable saving as, yeah, there we are, preview features. You can enable the save option to PBIP. So if you want to do that, and if you want to follow along, then make sure that you have this little button or this little icon selected. And if you have done that, then what you can do from this normal PBIX file is you just save it as. I prepared something for this, I think. Not there. Okay, and we're saving it as a PBIP file. And we're doing it in the PBIP folder. So, done. Not yet, but now it's done. And if we go back now and have a look at it, we're going to see the folder structure that I showed you on the slide. So what we have here now is, and I'm not sure if I can zoom in a little bit. Can you see it? Is it large enough, or is it hard to read? Maybe that, yeah, it's a bit small, right?
Maybe you can use the magnifier from Windows.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Bigger. Okay, you have the two folders, the report. So the name of the file that you opened will be the name of what you see in here. So you have the year final report is the name of the file I opened, dataset, and next to it you will have, this better, the report. You also get a link, or basically the report file and a git ignore. What the git ignore does, or what it is, we're gonna talk about later. Let's just dive into the dataset one. And how do I zoom back out?
Escape maybe?
No,
Sure.
it doesn't do that. Yeah.
Windows escape.
Okay. Perfect.
And you can also use the Windows plus and the Windows min to minus to zoom and zoom in and zoom out.
Okay. Now we need to go back and find that file. Or did I just delete that? I did. Let me pull it back up. PBIP. So if we go back into the data set, and don't worry, I'll make it bigger again. Then we have the following files in there. The definition data set, item config. So there's a lot of JSON files in there that are not really the most important ones. The one that you actually want to pay attention to, you can have a look at it, but the one that you want to pay attention to is the model one. And let's open that one, because in here you can see that the whole model is actually defined. And right now, this is still, yeah, I mean, it's better than the PBIX file because it's actually some code that you can read. But as you can see here on the side, on the right side, it's a lot of code, and it's also not super readable at this point. This will change once Tyndall actually becomes available, and once we have Tyndall, which is going to structure this a bit better and give you a better overview of what items you have in there. But still, with this, you can already kind of look at certain aspects of your model. And for example, if you're look for measures, you can see that all the measures that I have within my file are already or are also defined in here. You can see the expression that is used. So the DAX that is in here, you could change the DAX, save it back, then reload your model and see that everything that you change in here also becomes available within your model. So the code is editable, and you can basically write your model from scratch if you would like to, which I wouldn't recommend, but it's possible. So this is one part of the PBIP file. And if we go back, we have the report part, and the same goes here. So this is JSON files, which at the moment are not really readable. This will down the line also become a bit better structured, and if you open that, it's going to be pretty much the same thing, even a bit worse. Yeah, a lot worse actually. And it's editable. It's not supported at the moment to do that. So you can really edit every part or every aspect of your report, change themes, everything that you also can do in desktop just by using code. But as I said, if we want to do that, we should wait a while until we have the language that allows us to do that. The model.bim is at the moment really the one that is more interesting, I would say, and will be available probably sooner as well. Then we have, sorry, if we're going up, the git ignore file. The git ignore file is actually what Git will not check into itself, or will not the parts of the file that will not be checked into Git. So once you save a PBIP file, you will have the cache ABF you can see here, which is in the Git ignore file. This is where your data is actually stored. So if you convert your PBIX file into a PBIP file, the cache ABF holds your data. And the reason that this is not checked in is because this is the biggest part of the report. And we obviously don't want to check in the data that we're loading into our Power BI PBIX report into Git, because this is something that's going to change anyway, right? And it doesn't make sense to have these large objects also in Git or version it. So this actually gets then ignored. And if you have other files in there that you want to not check in, you can just write them here and define them here, and they will also then not be picked up by Git. And let me quickly jump back to the presentation. So as you saw, this is pretty much the same structure that you get when you save your PBIX as a PBIP file. And right now it might not seem Super exciting, but once you get to play around with it, and once we actually use it to deploy, it becomes fun, and it becomes pretty cool stuff. And we will see how that works. The general workflow, or I wouldn't even call it general workflow, it's one of the workflows that you can use to actually go through all the stuff that you have to do to connect your Power BI workspace to your Git repository in Azure DevOps. Is like we said, you need Azure DevOps, and I try to kind of display here that you have 2 parts or 3 parts to it, and you have once your local machine, which is the yellow part in the middle, and then you have the remote parts. So Azure DevOps and the Power BI service, obviously, they're not part of your local environment, not on your local machine. So yeah, there's this distinction between your local machine and what you actually have in the service or in the remote repository. And what you do is, depending on where you start, you create and clone a branch. So you start to create a Git repository on your local computer. We will do that. You do some changes on the file that I just created, right? The PBIP file. Then you commit those changes. You review and merge them with what's already there in your Git repository, and now you can actually set up some stuff when you think about Azure DevOps and about pipelines to do the continuous integration and continuous delivery part, because now it becomes more of an automated way to deploy your code, right? And thus also your Power BI reports. So first start is to actually from DevOps, get it to your local repository, then make your changes. You sync it back up with the remote repository. Sorry, is that a question? No. Sync it back up with your DevOps repository, and the DevOps repository is then connected to your Power BI workspace, which will pick up all the changes. And it doesn't really matter what you change now. So if you change something in the Power BI workspace, you can sync it back to your DevOps repository. If you change something in the DevOps repository, you can sync it to your workspace. So it works both ways, actually. And we want to demo that. And for that, we'll just close that one, close that one, and go to the workspace that Mark published the report to. So the demo solution is actually the last one that Mark published, right? And what we're going to do now is we want to get this into our DevOps repository. The DevOps repository is already created. So we have the DevOps repository. You can just actually spin up one yourself, then create a project. Once you have this organization created, you can just here create a project. This is done one of these. I've already created a project. Go into repos, and we already have a repo here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new, completely new one, or we can actually set up the, let me go there, I'm sorry. Set up the connection in the workspace settings. So you need a premium workspace for that, or the workspace needs to be in a premium capacity, embedded capacity, or a premium per user. And once you have that, you have the Git integration, which is then enabled. And you can then configure your Git integration just by disconnect it first. by selecting the organization that you created, the project, the Git repository, and the branch. We are going to connect and sync it. And we're going to connect and sync it and use what is already in the workspace and connect that to the repository that we have in DevOps. So we could go the other way around. What would happen if we go the other way around? Since you saw there's already a file in there, there's sales and sales in there. Actually, the one that Mark created earlier would be deleted because that's not in the repository, but on the workspace. We don't want that. We want it the other way around. So let's make sure that we verify. Here we have the sales data set and the sales report, right? What we don't have is a demo solution and the demo solution. So if we now sync from Workspace into Git, which went pretty fast, what we should see is that we will have 4 folders with a demo solution dataset and the demo solution report. So what happens? Mark earlier published the report as a PBIX file, right? And there's 2 ways that you can actually convert a PBIX file into a PBIP file. One way is the one that I showed you earlier, open it up in Power BI Desktop, save as PBIP, and then save it as a PBIP file. Or this is the other way that you can go, and you can just publish it to the workspace if it's in a premium capacity, and then connect that workspace to your repository that you created, and the same thing happens. So I've got the same structure that I got from the other report when I actually exchanged it, and when I saved it as a PBIP file, I again have the model.bim, the report.json, everything else in there. Can have a look at it. I can even edit it here. So if I now would edit the model.bim in here and for example bring in a new measure, that would then also be synced again with the workspace. So everything that I do here now will also happen in the workspace. What we want to do first though is, because we're not going to work here, we want to clone this repository. We have created the repository, and this is the remote part that I talked about, and the distinction of the remote part and the local part of the repository that you have. So we want to clone this repository, and we want to use clone and VS Codes, because right now this only lives actually in Azure DevOps. So Mark has it as a PBIX file on his computer. The Power BI service has it, and DevOps has it, but I don't have it, so I can't really work on it. I'm going to clone it in VS Code. And now it asks me to create a file that will be the repository destination. So now I will locally define my folder, which will be the destination for the repository that I'm going to then sync back up. So I've created this file from service folder. Okay, we're going to open that one. And we can see that now on my local machine, and I'm going to prove that it's really there by opening it on my local machine. I have all those files, and they weren't there before. So I should probably have shown that this was empty before, but it was empty before. And now everything gets synced from DevOps to my local machine again. And I have everything that I saw in Azure DevOps, also in VS Code now, which is why we want to use VS Code, or which is where we actually want to do the editing, because it's way easier to do it there than if you just go in your browser and then try to kind of do it in your browser. Here you have much more functionality that you can use and then play around with it. So we're actually going to do that. We're going to create a new measure, or change one of the measures. So Let's look for one of the measures. We have some fact internet sales. Okay, this is fine. And we're just going to say we want to have way more internet sales. So we're multiplying this by 100, and then we're saving it.
Be aware that you're saving it now to the main branch.
Yes, that is correct. So we are creating a new branch because what I just did is really, really bad. Since we don't want to commit directly to the main branch. And this is what I talked before when it comes to branching strategy, right? You want to have a stable branch, your main branch, which is the one deployed. This is your report that works fine, perfect. This is what gets deployed and what you keep up to date with the service. And if you work on a folder, then usually what happens is you have version 1, version 1.1, version 1.2, and stuff like that, right? And you don't know which file actually is the latest one, so you have to click and then rename it, delete the one that you want to publish, rename the one version 1.2 to the one that you want to publish. So yeah, it gets messy, right? What you want to do is you want to create a branch. And this branch is the one that you're going to work on. So it's a copy, and the branch is just a copy of your main branch. So the one that's already deployed to the service gets copied. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to make my changes, and then I'm going to publish it. And I'm going to publish it to the repository. And this is where a really neat feature comes into play. And I'm going to ask someone else to review my changes before we actually going to deploy it. And this is what we're going to show. So what I need to do this is actually create a branch, and I call it Christian's feature branch. As easy as that. So I have Christian's feature branch now. I can see that I'm in my branch. And last time, or when I saved the changes that I made to the model, this actually showed up. The change tracker, or the source control, basically, where I can see that something happened. So there's one file that changed. So this is why there's a 1 in here. If I want to see what has changed, I can actually select the changes. If I make more changes, then there will be 2. All the files that have changed will actually you will be able to see them here. And once you click on them, you get this nice side-to-side comparison where you can see, okay, this is what it was before, this is what it is now. And this again, right now, this is not super readable, but once this becomes a bit better, once Tyndall is there, it will be easier to really identify the expressions, right? So all the measures that you're writing will be easier to be identifiable, and you will see the DAX code, the Power Query, everything will be, the M code, everything will be a bit better to be actually edited. But still, I think this beats going through 2 different files and then comparing them and finding out, okay, what has actually changed? If someone doesn't give me the changes and says, okay, compare this file with the file that I've worked on, and I'm just going through it, then I mean, that will take forever. So I get this, visual hint that something has changed, and it's this 100, and I can go through it. So multiple changes will show up multiple times. And if I'm now saying, okay, this is what I'm working on, this is what I wanted, perfect, 100 times the fact internet sales is exactly what I want to do, is then I have to commit that. And I'm staging this change that I made. So I'm saying, okay, this is the one that I want to take into my commit. I'm saying, okay, multiplied internet sales by 100. So I'm giving it by 100. I'm giving it a commit message, and usually this should be something that's really telling you exactly what happened there. So make your commit messages meaningful, because if you just say, okay, I changed the measure, or I changed the model, this will not help you, later on if you made 50, 20, 100 changes to know exactly when which step happened, right? So make it meaningful, commit it, and publish it. So I committed it. Now it's part of my local branch, and I'm going to publish this branch. So this local branch is only on my computer again. Now what I'm doing with publishing it, I make it available here, because we can see the branches here. We were in main, and now we have Christian's feature branch. Perfect. So the change that I did is in my branch, and I didn't have to change. So I changed the code, I changed my file, made everything better, hopefully, in the model, and published it, but it's not really available yet in the service, right? So what I want to do is now create a pull request, and this is where the pull comes in. Create a pull request from my branch to the main branch. And we said the main branch is the one that's actually the published report. And what I did as changes now, I want to bring into the main branch. And I'm not going to just say, okay, everything should be fine. Yeah, let's just save this as I did before. But I'm going to create a pull request, description, and say, we want to required reviewer. And Mark should be the one that actually checks if I did everything correctly and everything went to plan. Yeah, the one overseeing the project basically will be then the one checking, okay, all the developers did their job right. Mark is checking on that. So we are just coding away, doing all the fancy little nooks and crannies, and Mark has to sit there and look through all of it. We can work it to or link it to work items. So this goes then into when you're really setting up the enterprise way of deploying that, right? If you have a project management tool in the back, and if you're also using the boards, and if you're using the items, if you create little backlog items, then you can save them here. You can connect your changes or your commits to that, so that you're really seeing and really limiting what you have to then later on actually write in your documentation. So you see your commit message. There's one user story that I needed to fulfill. So those commits are all belonging to this one user story. Perfect. I have a documentation later on about everything that I did. Everything's connected to my items and works beautifully. We're creating that, and now I'm done as a developer. I made my changes, created the pull request, and I'm good to go. Now Mark actually gets a message because he's a required reviewer to check that. And do you want to take over the screen sharing?
Yes, let me do that. There we go. Let's start with where we basically left off, and that's where you raised that pull request. What's actually happening is, because I'm one of the reviewers, I'm assigned as one of the reviewers, I get an email from DevOps telling me that I have to do something. So I can no longer be lazy. I now really have to check Christian's work. And I have to check if it makes sense what he did. So that's the point where I can go into Azure DevOps, look at the changes and all of that. But let's say that we first want to see what are actually these changes. So as soon as I go to Azure DevOps, and I'm here in the same environment as where Christian was, so let me zoom in this one as well a little bit. I can see actually that there is a pull request where I'm required to review it. So as soon as I open this one, I can basically see, okay, hey, there is a pull request open for me. There is a nice description to it. If there are work items, I can go to that as well, and I can see what the work items are that are related. similarly to the code comparison that Christian already showed in Visual Studio Code, I can do the same here. I can see the commit that he had, and Christian just said, okay, I created a commit with the same message, multiplied fact internet sales by 100. Keep in mind that there is not necessarily only one commit you can do. So I would recommend to rather have more commits but smaller changes, because in the end, let's say he has 15 commits and I approve 10 of them, but the other 5 not. I can just cherry pick which are relevant and which are not, and only release those 10 that are okay. So let's say he changed 15 different measures. You can rather have 15 separate commits, which are all part of the same feature branch. So looking at the commits here, I can just see, okay, this is what he changed. And similarly to what we've already seen, I can review the change here. So the difference, I can exactly see, okay, this is the line of code that has been changed. The only thing here is that they are below each other instead of next to each other. That's just a matter of preference, because you can have them in line or you can have them side by side, just whatever you like. I usually prefer to have them in line, so I can directly see, okay, this was the old one, this was the new one. But there's another thing that becomes interesting here, because this is just a code. I have no clue what this means in reality for the solution. So what I can do, if I go back to Power BI and I just create a new workspace, and I just did. So what I'm going to do is I'm just deleting this one for a second, because, well, Christian was talking, I already quickly created it. What I can do is I just create a new workspace, and then I'm just going to call this check Christian's work. And of course, again, it needs to be on some sort of premium as well. The next thing that I can do is also link this workspace to the same Git environment. So in the project was Manchester user group, repository this one, but I'm just going to check out this one feature branch that Christian just created. I'm going to connect this. What you'll see is that this workspace is going to pick up all the changes Christian made, because I'm just checking out this one feature branch now. So within a second, I'm going to see the demo solution, and if we wait a tiny bit longer, we're going to see also the other data set and report, as well as the 2 reports that are connected to these data sets. Given there's no data in here, I have to refresh the data set first. So let's say, okay, everything's synced now. I have to refresh the data set. I didn't check the credentials, obviously, though it might fail. Oh, it takes over the credentials. So as soon as I open this, I can actually see the result of what Christian changed. This was just a normal measure, but let's say I'm going to add that same measure now to the screen. I'm going to see that this is way higher than the one I had over there. And that is just because he multiplied everything by 100. So I can also check within the solution itself, just by quickly spinning up a new workspace, linking it to the relevant repository. I can see what does this mean for the actual outcome. Let's say, okay, I'm fine with this. I couldn't imagine that I approve everything, multiplying everything by 100, but let's say for this time, I'm fine with it. So I'm going back to the pull request. And in this pull request, I can say, okay, now, well, this is fine. I'm going to approve this. I need to add a comment. Fine for now. Just for the demo. I'm going to approve this one. Fine, approve. Yep, it's now set to approved. So I'm the only reviewer. Sometimes you might want to have multiple reviewers checking the work, and I can just complete it. And by completing it, basically based on the icon, you can already see that we had that feature branch here, the one that Christian created. And maybe we have multiple feature branches, but I'm going to merge this back into main. So as soon as I now click complete, it's going to merge all the code from Christian's feature branch back into the main branch. And with that, it will start showing up in that other workspace as well. I can even customize the message. Just for now, it's fine. Because I can review this later on, all these messages to check, okay, when did what change? I'm just going to play a complete merge. And it's merging the pull request right now, as we can see right here. So let's give this a little second. And it should now be done. Imagine that I just said you might have multiple commits. If I want to check out just a few commits, I could have clicked the cherry pick option and just select a few commits instead of all of it. So let's say we're going to go back to our repository and we're going to go into the main branch. So I'm right here in the main branch. And we're going to look into this data sets, which we had right here. And we're going to search for measure. Ah, nice. Well, dollar sales in that case. There we go. So right here, we can see that now in my main branch, I have the exact same change as Christian made because it is synced to my main branch, but it's still code right now. So as soon as we go back to the Power BI workspace and we go to that workspace, no, you don't have to save. We go back to that workspace. We can see on the top here that their source control is telling me there is one change waiting for me. So the fact that it is changed in the DevOps repository does not mean yet that it's also represented in the workspace. I can see what is different, and it shows me this is modified, this item. So it is not necessarily a new item, it's modified. So I can say, okay, fine, update all. And then as soon as I committed this, it's updating the metadata of this data set and only the metadata. So it's not overriding any of the data. And as soon as I open the report, well, let me just quickly drag and drop the same thing in here again as I just did. And make it the card visual again. We can see the same changes applied. And in this way, we can basically have changes in multiple feature branches, which then in the end sync back into the main branch, which is linked to our workspace. Well, you've heard us telling or saying a lot of things now about merging feature branches, commit, pull, push, all of these typical terms. The collaborative development and version control that you have with the Git integration, that comes with a lot of different buzzwords, I would almost say. As soon as you start collaborating with each other, define a clear branching strategy. Christian just called this branch like Christian's feature branch. Usually a best practice is to start with your initials. So for me, it would be ML, for Christian it would be CT, and then you tell what the feature branch is about. Make sure you implement also code review. So somebody that's going to validate your changes before you merge everything together. And in the merging process, make sure it runs smoothly. So have multiple commits instead of one big commit. Rather have many small commits so you can cherry pick and just pick what's relevant. Make also sure that you have a clear communication with each other on the way of working, on the channels with your team members. Inform them, don't wait for them with that email, because imagine that I would be the one checking all the work for our entire team. I'm luckily not, but imagine that's the case. I got tons of these emails and I would very quickly define a rule in my Outlook to delete all these emails from Azure DevOps. So as soon as something is ready to be reviewed, inform that person about it by sending them a Teams message, or just commit like every day we close the day with reviewing changes, or make sure that there's a repeated moment. Document your solution and your changes in the commit messages as well as the merge messages. And if this whole way of working for you is new, then make sure that your team gets up to speed with all these things of Azure DevOps as a new tool, but also with Git. And typically talking about Git, let me repeat a few of all these typical buzzwords that you've heard us mentioning multiple times. Branching is the first one. A branch is basically taking a copy of the code into a separate work environment. And if you start Googling this, you'll typically see the pictures that we have on the right bottom. So you basically take a copy, you work on the side, and later on you can merge those changes, or you can basically merge your changes back. Then you have push, and push is basically as soon as your work is done, you push it to the remote repository or to the online repository, to Azure DevOps. So your local changes on your computer, that's what you want to push to the cloud. So typically, as soon as your office is on fire, make sure your changes are committed and pushed to the cloud before you leave the building. Then you have a pull request, and pull request is basically creating a request to merge your changes into the main branch. where I warned Christian before that, hey, you're committing the changes to the main branch, you can protect your branches as well. If you set up a project well, you will protect the main branch to make sure that nobody can harm the main branch. Nobody can directly commit to the main branch, and they always have to create a feature branch before. That's also a work agreement that you make to each other that, okay, this is our way of working, this is what we do, and we always have to open a pull request to merge the changes. The merge itself is then basically bringing everything back together. So the feature branches go back into the main branch. And then you still have a few versions of merges, which is basically rebasing. So you're changing where your feature branch is based on. So you're basically moving the time or the markers. And the squash commit, in all fairness, that's one that I'm not that often using, but maybe Christian does and can give a very quick voiceover.
Yeah, very quick voiceover. We also have, I think, 1 minute left. So maybe after this, we're gonna jump to the wrap up. Squash commit would be if you have multiple commits and the multiple commits are all then just basically squashed into one, and you're rewriting your history. And some people say this is nice to have because it makes for a cleaner view of what your commit history is. Some people say, yeah, I mean, this is nice, but what you want to see in the end is every single commit by itself, because the beauty of it is that you now can also, I mean, we did this all just in succession of each other, which is nice, but you can go back to any point in time, any of those commits and say, okay, we went really wrong here, and I just need to go back to a version that was there before. And because it's all just code, right? It doesn't take up space, and you can just revert back to the stage where you were like 20 commits ago. So this is really what makes this so nice.
Yes. And the last one before we run into the wrap up, the pull is basically as soon as Christian made changes online, they are not synced yet to my local computer. So I have to pull all his changes to my computer, as the word already tells you, is basically give me whatever is there. I want to have the same. So basically every day before you start working, you should do a pull from the remote branch to make sure you have the same code again. Having that said, the demo I already showed you because I like to do some things in a different order. Let's jump to the wrap up. And Christian, do you want to do the wrap up?
Yeah, I can do that. So from the beginning, plan your stages. So really think through what you're going to do and what is involved in your whole project, right? In everything that you're going to do while setting up Power BI as a solution. Don't just start from, oh, I want to have a couple of nice reports. Really spend some time thinking everything through. This will help you in the end. This will really pay off. Also spend time on developing a good data model. Mark talked about it before. A good data model is the solid foundation for everything that you're reporting on, right? So this is really the bread and butter of what's going to be in your reports. The reporting experience lives and dies with a good data model underneath. If it's bad, then you even can create slow import models. So that's really something that also needs spend your time wisely, spend it there. Make your solution scalable. This goes hand in hand with developing a good data model, because if you're really thinking about what you want to have, right, your solutions will be more scalable. If you just say, okay, this is going to be 10 reports, this is not going to be a big solution, it maybe doesn't make sense to set it up. But if you think this is a project that might take on and might take off, and I'm going to have hundreds of reports and multiple data models, think about it in the beginning and set DevOps up accordingly, Azure DevOps, so that you can really have a solid structure. The Git integration on workspace level versions your work. That's what I said. So your commits, make sure that you don't have version 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.1.3. So this really gets rid of all of that and allows you to just revert back to whatever commit you made back in the past. So perfect. Then PBIP is your friend. Try it out if you haven't so far. Just really go into it, check it out. PBIP allows you to deploy as code, and if you have done some XMLA or use the XMLA endpoint to deploy your models, you might be even a bit familiar with it if you do it via tabular editor. And if you then deploy the model.bim, you can actually see the Timsel script, right, which is really basically what you see when you're doing the same thing with a PBIP file. So play around with a PBIP file to cut it short. With proper project management, so with a well set up Azure DevOps and really defined roles, comes a good project. And this goes back to what Mark said earlier. So really make sure that you limit the people that can commit to the main branch, if at all. Think about who should be a reviewer, who should be working on the model, who should be working on the report. Add them together, because you will have faster and better projects in the end. And that's it.